Peter Pan by J.M. Barrie, retold by Greg Worswick, illustrated by Douglas Draper Jr. Wendy, John, and Michael Darling lived in London with their parents and their big dog Nana. Every night, Wendy told bedtime stories to her younger brothers. One night, Wendy woke up to find a boy sitting on the floor and crying. He had bright red hair, carried a toy sword, and was dressed in clothes made of green leaves. "Who are you?" Wendy asked. "And why are you crying?" "I'm Peter Pan," the boy replied. "I'm crying because I've lost my shadow." Wendy found Peter's shadow hiding in a drawer, and she sewed it to the bottoms of his shoes with a needle and thread. "All better," she smiled. Peter was delighted and impressed, and he invited Wendy to come back to Neverland to be his mother and take care of him. Just then, Peter rose off the floor and began to fly around the room. John and Michael woke up and jumped on their beds. "I forgot," Peter laughed. "You need pixie dust." He blew a loud whistle, and a bright light appeared at the window. When the light came closer and finally landed on Peter's hand, he introduced his fairy friend Tinkerbell, and she shook her magic pixie dust all over Wendy and her brothers. Now just think of a happy thought. They thought hard, and before they knew it, they too were rising off the floor and flying. "Let's go!" cried Peter, flying out the window. Wendy, John, and Michael followed Peter Pan and Tinkerbell over the city of London and high above the clouds. After a long time flying, they reached a beautiful island. "This is Neverland," Peter said, "a place where children never grow up." They glided down to a big, hollowed-out tree and climbed inside. This was where Peter Pan lived with his friends, the Lost Boys. They were all funny and nice and wore costumes that were silly and fuzzy. They were delighted to have Wendy as their new mother. Peter Pan took Wendy on a tour of the island. But the evil Captain Hook, a mean pirate who had a big black hook instead of a hand, had kidnapped the beautiful Princess Tiger Lily and had her tied up at Mermaid Lagoon. Peter swooped down and saved Tiger Lily. They returned her to her father, the chief, and Tiger Lily's whole tribe promised to protect Peter Pan and his friends from Captain Hook forever. But it was too late. Captain Hook had set a trap, and when Peter and Wendy returned to the treehouse, Hook's pirates captured all the children. Only Peter Pan and Tinkerbell managed to get away by flying out the top of the tree. Captain Hook and the pirates brought the children to their pirate ship. "Time to walk the plank, kiddies," he laughed, pushing Wendy with his hook. "Not on my watch," came Peter's voice from high above. Tick-tock, tick-tock came the sound of a ticking clock as a hungry crocodile swam below the pirate ship and smiled up at Captain Hook. This was the crocodile who had bitten off Captain Hook's hand. Peter had fed it a ticking clock so that Hook would always know when the crocodile was nearby. Captain Hook trembled in fear, and Peter swooped down from the ship's sails to challenge the villain to a sword fight. They fought, and finally Captain Hook fell into the open mouth of the happy crocodile below. "I'll be back for you, Peter Pan," Hook cried. Peter Pan and Tinker Bell released their friends, and everyone rejoiced. Hooray! But Wendy and her brothers had had a little too much adventure for one day and were feeling very homesick. "We want to go home," they told Peter. "We miss our mother." Peter and Tinker Bell agreed to take them back, and they set out right away. When they arrived back in London, Peter was sad. "If you stay here in London," he frowned, "you'll grow up and forget about me." But when he saw how dreadfully Mrs. Darling missed her children, Peter felt his heart soften and understood why they had to stay. "I'll come visit you every spring," he promised. "Never forget thinking your happy thoughts," he cried before flying out the window and disappearing into the night sky.